Now we got the holes, we got the counter bores, now we got this cut over the top of our tab. So now let's bring in the next vector. And the next vector is going to be the profile, so where I'm going to cut on the outside. And you can see it's just different drawings. I just made each one of these pieces in a drawing, and then I just saved it, and then I just keep importing these vectors in. So we got the third pass is the profile, DXF. Boop. Click OK. And so now it's going to import and starting to look like something now. So you can see, to get the part, I'm actually going to go profile all the way around this, but in profiling I needed to cut this away because this is lower, and so it's actually going to make a big box. Now I'm not going to do these angles here because I want this surface to be a lot smoother than Mini Mill is going to be able to do. So I'm actually made some fixtures, and I'm going to set these up on the lathe and turn those on the lathe, that way I get a nice smoother finish. This one I'm going to do with the Mini Mill, and we'll just have to buff it off. So now here's our profile. So now we get to do a profile instead of an area clear. And so let's select it. It's already pink, or if I'm standing off of it I can select it. That's the toolpath I'm going to cut. So now we want to do a 2D profiling. So this one I want the tool to be on the outside. It's going to run around and make the profile. So make sure we click outside. Start depth is 0. The finish depth, I can leave it at 0.75 and it'll finish out right at the bottom, but if I'm off a little bit on my 0, it might not get all the way through. So I'm going to change that and just let that tool go down just a little further because it's actually overhanging. And you'll see when I set up on the Mini Mill why I can do that, because I'm not really going to a specific depth. I'm just having to cut this all the way around the outside to get it out of my part. So I'm going to finish out at 0.76. And then we're going to leave our allowances and tolerances and everything. Now the final pass thickness, what I've found on this thing is if you let it run, sometimes that final pass is so thin that it'll actually pick up the pieces that are going to fall off on the outside and it'll catch them in the tool. So I want to define the final pass thickness just to make sure I got enough metal there that when it runs that last pass, it's actually cutting the metal away. So I'm going to set the final pass thickness, but you got to remember, my part is 0.75. I told it that the finish depth is 7.6. So if I want to leave 20 thousandths on my final pass thickness, I need to put this at 0.03 because I already got 10 thousandths it's going to overhang, and I want to leave the 20 thousandths worth of material. And so you got to get that figured out. You can adjust it in your Mach3 in the step file. But it's a lot easier just to do it here. So I'm going to leave that at 0.03, and that's going to be a final pass thickness of 20 thousandths. And that should be enough that I can make sure I got enough material there. I mean, if I want to do a final pass of 30, then I can make that 0.4, and we can do that. So we can try it at 30. It'll cut it easily. And then that'll give us a 30 thousandths. Now then the final pass allowance, I want to select that because after it steps down it leaves little marks on the sides, and so this final pass allowance is like a clearing cut where it runs one cut all the way around at the proper distance away. And so I'm actually going to set that at 2 thousandths, and so it'll come around and it'll be out 2 thousandths, and then that last cut it's going to come right up to the edge, and then it's going to cut it all the way, and then it'll get rid of all those tool marks. So you can read the help on there. Alright, so machine saves good. Now we're going to select the same tool, so 1/4 inch, and then we click on that. And so by default I don't really have a step over because all I'm doing is going straight down cutting this thing. So step over is not important, step down is important. And then the feed rate, I think I can go a little faster, so I'm going to go 5 inches per minute. And it's going to run around and cut a little bit faster because it's not having to turn a lot of sharp curves, so I think it should be able to keep up. And cutting directions, climbing. And now for this one I want to add some lead in lead outs because it tends to chatter when it goes down, but I'm not real sure if it's necessary because this part is so deep. But I think I may put a lead in lead out, and that way it goes away from the part, drops down and comes back in. So we're at a lead in lead out, I'm going to use a distance about 0.4 because what I'm thinking is I can get off of the part, step in, and then come into the part. And then I don't want to have it do it automatically. So right here, it's selected this part, and right there's a little dot. It's going to put the lead in, lead out somewhere near that. If you click automatic, if you uncheck that, and you'll see a little line show up that shows you where the tool's going to go. And so we're not going to ramp. And then we got our material set up, so now we want to name this one. And so this is fourth step profile. Now when I do this one, it's going to create two actually tool pass. One's going to be to cut it all the way, and then the next one's going to be that final pass, because I did that check up here at the top for the final pass allowance right there. It's going to actually generate two, so you'll see that. So we're all set up, so now let's calculate. And sometimes it gives an error. It says an error occurred when creating the lead in, lead out. And it says the lead and lead outs were changed or removed to avoid gouging. So that's okay, I don't care. But then somewhere right here you'll see that little line, and that little line is the lead in, lead out. So it's going to come all the way out to the edge of the part, sink down, and then come back in. So I kind of like that. We'll see how that works. But if we look back over on our list here, what it did is it did this 4-step profile. It did the cutting portion, and then this LP is actually that final pass where it's going to come in, last pass I guess, come in and do that final cut. So we're almost there. We got the whole shape cut out. Now we got to come in here and cut out the hourglass shape right in the middle.